Came to see you. Soren stepped forward and chuckled softly. Why did sixth brother Huang suddenly come down the mountain, without even letting me know? The dog demon stopped chewing, remained silent for a long moment, then shifted its body slightly aside, revealing the scene on the bed. Another slightly thinner dog demon lay quietly on the bed, swallowing a piece of soft innards in small bites. And beneath it, a palm-sized puppy. Demon was curled up, suckling.
Many enemies on the mountain came down to lay low, Old Six Huang said, in a muffled voice. Don't talk to me about rules. There's plenty to eat and drink here. I am staying here for a full half-year, at least until my son has grown a bit.
Seeing this, delight shone even brighter in Soren's eyes. Congratulations. Mother and child are both safe. As he spoke, he walked over to Old Six Huang, and without minding the blood-stained bedboards, casually sat down. Soren reached out and draped his arm over the dog demon's shoulder. Such good news, and you didn't even tell your brother in advance.
Old Six Huang glanced at him, but didn't pull away. Quit trying to cozy up today. Not even if your county magistrate himself came. I wouldn't leave.
Stay, Soren beamed at him, his black and white eyes becoming clearer. At these words, a faint smile finally appeared on Old Six Huang's face. It looked back at him, just about to speak, when its pupils suddenly contracted. In the guise of their intimate gesture, a steel knife had already sunk into its chest. Hearing the abnormal sound, Jace jerked his head up to look. Then his entire body jolted, unable to believe the sight before him. Only then did they see Soren holding Old Six Huang, his expression calm. A guest is a guest. How could I drive you away? As his words fell, another knife plunged into the dog demon's heart. Blood splattered onto both of them, adding a touch of luster to the dark red of the room. You should have just stayed here. Don't go anywhere. Soren's voice became increasingly gentle, his movements more practiced. Each sentence marked a merciless stab, turning the robust body into a pulp. Old Six Huang struggled fiercely, but no matter how much strength it used against Soren's pinning arm, its efforts vanished like clay oxen into the sea, utterly unresponsive. To an onlooker, it seemed to sit as docile as a baby, watching itself be pierced through by the blade. A long time later, Soren finally released his grip, watching indifferently as the lifeless dog demon collapsed to the ground. He raised his head. You, go outside first. Jace's body was as stiff as wood, his mind even more chaotic. Under the other's gaze, he twitched, turned, and walked out of the house, but couldn't resist glancing back one more time before leaving. He saw Soren sitting on the edge of the bed, slowly pulling the steel knife out of Old Six Huang's body. Sidelong, he gazed at the dog demon on the bed, its eyes full of terror. He reached out and took the innards the creature was holding in its mouth, murmuring softly, "Sister-in-law, a family should be together, intact. Don't you think?" Jay stumbled, took large strides over the threshold, stood still outside the house, closed his eyes, and breathed deeply. A moment later, Soren strode out, wiping his slender fingers with a rag, and said flatly, "Go inside. Clean it up properly." Hearing this, Jace opened his eyes and looked back at the familiar face, his thoughts like a tangled ball of yarn, finally coalescing into a single stupefied question. "What? Why what?" Soren raised an eyebrow and looked at him quizzically. Jace grated his teeth, eyes wide with rage. "Why? Of course. Why did you suddenly start killing? Why? 1 second chatting amiably, the next like slaughtering an animal? You sat there and butchered that dog demon. Why did you have that damned smile on your face while you did it? Do you hate them or not? How do you view the dead villagers? How do you view these fiends?" In Jace's eyes, the man could coldly watch the corpses of his own kind being devoured, and then treat those dog demons, who were like brothers to him, with the same coldness. including that puppy whose eyes hadn't even opened yet. This was utterly incomprehensible. Beneath these many doubts, Jace forcibly calmed his emotions and asked the most practical question.
Why kill them? Aren't you afraid of the Yellow Hide's revenge? Or has Lord Shen already come up with a better solution?
What solution? Soren frowned and said indifferently, it didn't want to leave, and I was unwilling to let it continue eating people. So I had to find a compromise that would satisfy everyone.
That counts as a reason?
Hearing this, Jace took a deep breath, realizing the other was unwilling to explain in detail. So he simply plunged into the house and began disposing of the dog demon's remains. It had only been a few days since they'd last met, yet he found he could no longer understand this lord. When there was no one beside him, Soren stood quietly at the doorway, finally discarding the rag, revealing his faintly trembling fingers. He lowered his eyes to stare at his hand, clenching his fist hard, forcing his fingertips to still. As a transmigrator, this was the first time he had seen dead bodies so clearly, watching the foul, stinking, rotten flesh being torn off in huge chunks. Even able to see the shreds of meat between the dog demon's teeth. Soren really wanted to vomit, and could only rely on the repeated stabbing to vent his fear and anger. But he had to control his emotions. Only by calming down would he have a chance to hold on until the Demon Suppression Bureau arrived. If even he was afraid, there was no one in this vast Boyun County who would lend him a hand. As for Jace's question, Soren had indeed pondered it. But in the end, he had realized one thing. Was there any other solution? The answer was no. If he washed his hands of it, the people in this village would still die. Death either way, an unsolvable situation. So just do what you are supposed to do. Why seek trouble for yourself? Rather than numbing himself here with talk of the bigger picture or enduring for a moment's peace, it was better to collect more Fiends' lifespan, strengthen his own power, and when the next beast extended its claws, he could cut it down with a single strike. Soren recalled the Fiend's lifespan. This harvest had been quite plentiful.
A dog demon with awakened intelligence, not yet entered the initial realm. Total lifespan, 145 years. 59 remaining. Absorption complete. Sentient dog fiend, not yet entered the initial realm. Total lifespan, 152. Remaining 61 years. Absorption complete. Non-sentient dog fiend. Total lifespan, 80. Remaining 79 years. Absorption complete. Remaining Fiends lifespan, 199 years. Remaining personal lifespan, 1 year.
It even rounded it up for me, making it exactly 200 years in total. Soren hadn't yet decided where to invest the Fiend's lifespan next. Whether to continue with the demon-subduing blade art, using the Sunfire blade as a foundation, to explore more about the initial realm, or practice the cloud-parting long fist, to try to gain more talent in fist and palm techniques. While Soren was pondering, Jace had already loaded the Fiend's corpses onto the cart and led the old donkey over.
Regardless of any considerations Lord Shen might have.
Jace handed over the reins, his expression complicated, and turned to look into the distance. The villagers standing scattered on the field. Ridges still wore that numb expression, standing with hands hanging like the living dead. Only when their gazes swept over the cart did a trace of emotion flicker in their vacant eyes.
At least today, you saved their lives.
After Jace finished speaking, he tried to force a strained smile, but felt the reins being snatched from his hand. He looked up and saw that Soren was already riding the old donkey, leisurely wandering off. Soren stretched and rolled his eyes, screw considering. Before praising someone, you first have to be sarcastic and belittle them. What a lousy manner. So pretentious.